Well, it's unthinkable to think that they could be the source of the leaked emails that cost Debbie Wasserman Schultz her job. I can't imagine the NSA feeding Julian Assange this information. Could you?
Yes, that's exactly.
You think they would actually use that outlaw, that cruel,
that is exactly what Bill Binney is saying. And
we would never do that.
Let me move to the reports of both the Washington Post, New York Times, NBC News has confirmed it, that the assessment from the CIA is not only did Russia make an attempt to interfere in the 2016 election to be disruptive, but they actually were trying to be disruptive in order to help Donald Trump. And the transition put out a statement that essentially humiliated the CIA and saying that Donald Trump didn't believe the assessment from the CIA because these are the same people that said there were weapons of that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Does Donald Trump have confidence in America's intelligence?
Of course he has confidence in America's intelligence, but we don't have confidence in the New York Times releasing a report of unnamed sources of some kind of study that itself, in the Washington Post, said was inconclusive, to claim that because the CIA had hacked emails of the DNC and the RNC and only used DNC emails, that meant that Russia was trying to influence the election. Because the other piece of this, Chuck, is that the RNC was absolutely not hacked, number one. We had the FBI in the RNC. We've been working with the FBI. We've had intelligence experts here.
Wait, hang
on, Chuck. No, the RNC
explain why
was
you had the FBI
was
there.
Not hacked.
Well, then why was the FBI involved?
Well, it's really simple. Well, it's really simple. Because when the DNC was hacked, we called the FBI, and they came in to help us. And they came in to review what we were doing, and through our systems, went through every single thing that we did. We went through this for a month.
I understand.
And we were not hacked. So wait a second. If we were not hacked, and that is absolutely not true, then where does that story lie?
So nobody with the
story
let me ask you this, Reince.
No.
Not a single person connected to the RNC was hacked. No Republican vendor who had interactions with the RNC network was hacked. You guys have had a very specific denial that the RNC's network wasn't hacked. That doesn't mean Republicans associated with the RNC weren't hacked. That doesn't rule that out. Do you categorically rule all that out?
I don't know why you're so hot about this. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you should actually be happy that the RNC wasn't hacked.
Well, no,
the RNC was not hacked, Chuck. Number one, the RNC was not hacked. I don't know of any employee on any of their own Gmail accounts that was hacked. So what I'm trying to tell you is the RNC was not hacked, number one. That was, and by the way, that was the specific allegation that was made in the actual New York Times article. The article didn't say affiliates of the RNC. The article didn't say employee. No, wait a second, Chuck. The article said the RNC was hacked. So don't be defensive with me that I'm refuting the specific fact. Well, I'm refuting the specific fact that was made in the article to create this entire firestorm. And the specific fact, as we've been told by the FBI repeatedly, including 2 days ago when we checked back with them about this issue, repeated the fact that the RNC was not hacked. So do you tell me where this story is at? Why would the press run with something that wasn't true?
Let me ask you, though, about the CIA's assessment. I understand you want a specific denial about the RNC. The CIA has made this assessment. But Donald Trump so ignored the assessment. Do you not believe Russia was involved? Do you not believe anything that Russia was attempting to infiltrate the U.S. election system in any way, shape, or form?
Here's what I'm saying. Number one, you don't have a single source. I've given you a source, specifically me, who runs the RNC, to say that the RNC was not hacked. You tell me who the specific source on the other side of this that says the RNC was hacked. Okay, you say, okay, we covered that.
My question's not about the RNC. Reince,
I'm getting to it.
No. My question is about whether or not Russia tried to infiltrate our election in some way, shape, or form. The hacking of the DNC, the hacking of John Podesta. You don't believe, you and Donald Trump do not believe Russia was involved in that at all? That's what your statement said Friday night.
And what I'm asking you, Chuck, is tell me what the specific source that you have, other than a New York Times article that claims that through unnamed sources who they say was also inconclusive. What source are you using to be so adamant to get a response from me on something that doesn't have a source to it? What's your source?
So what you're saying is until the CIA comes out and produces somebody on the record, you're going to dispute this the entire time.
No, I'm not disputing. I just don't know whether it's true or not. And if it is true,
so you don't believe, that means you do not believe, Reince, that means you do not believe the assessments of the U.S. intelligence community.
How can I? Wait a second. Now you're so circuitous here, Chuck.
No, I'm just saying.
No
I'm asking you. You guys have the sourcing. You are getting briefings on this. You have been briefed. The president-elect was briefed on this. It's clear you don't believe it. I'm asking you why you don't believe it.
Number one, I don't have. I'm not in those briefings. First of all, and eventually I will be. But the second thing I'm telling you is you have no source, no conclusive source that you're using other than a false article in the New York Times somehow claiming
you keep
that this is
the New York Times. You're ignoring the Washington Post report for obvious reasons because you want to deny the RNC aspect of that.
No,
I understand
I'm not ignoring the Washington Post report.
The Washington Post conclusion had to do with the CIA's assessment of it. What I'm saying is, do you believe, let's just clear this up, do you believe, does the president-elect believe that Russia was trying to muddy up and get involved in the election in 2016?
Number one, you don't know it, I don't know it, and there's been no conclusive or specific report to say otherwise. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would tell you is that you don't have any proof that the outcome of the election was changed. Forget about who did the hacking.
Do you want to know?
Even if someone did the hacking, no, you don't have any.
Tell me how you know that. Does he want to know?
What specific? Of course we want to know.
So there's going to be an investigation? He wants an investigation on Capitol Hill?
Of course. Listen, I don't know what investigations he wants, but yes, we do want to know. But what I don't want to do, Chuck, is have a debate with you over an unnamed source that the article said was inconclusive over who hacked and why they hacked. Look, someone hacked. We don't like that. I don't like it. No one wants it. We want to protect American interests. It's America first. I don't want the DNC hacked. I don't want anybody hacked. But I don't know who did the hacking. That's my point. So the second point I would make is you have no idea whether the hacking even influenced the election.
You dispute 17 different intelligence agencies that have assessed that Russia agents were behind this. You dispute this?
Chuck, this is insane. In the same article about those 17 agencies, the report was inconclusive. You're forgetting the most important piece.
It was inconclusive about Vladimir Putin, Reince. It was not inconclusive that Russian agents were involved. There's a difference. And I understand why you're trying to parse this, but there is a difference. Do you not believe any of this?
I'm not trying to parse it. I don't know who did the hacking, Chuck. The article is based on a lie that the RNC was hacked, so the entire premise of the article is false. The sources are unnamed, and the report was inconclusive. Listen, I don't want anyone hacked, okay? The point is, though, we need to find out more facts about this situation. Then we can make intelligent decisions later, and you and I can have a more intelligent conversation about what to do about it.
All right. Reince Priebus, I think we have to leave it there because of time.
Judge Andrew Napolitano to talk about all sorts of things. Judge, you know Bill Binney, William Binney, former NSA official, the architect of the NSA surveillance program.
Yes.
He says that the person, as it turns out, despite what the DNC and Democrats are saying, it was not Russia that hacked the DNC. It was perhaps it was somebody from the NSA who was angry about the fact that she was using personal email server, which violated what is called gamma material, which is the most sensitive at the NSA. Do you believe that?
I do believe it, and one of the reasons that there is so much anxiety, it's very interesting, and it's probably going to become an issue in the campaign. One of the reasons there is so much anxiety about Mrs. Clinton from the intelligence community is the belief that some of the materials that she handled with such extreme carelessness, I'm using Jim Comey's phrase, in my opinion it was criminal, but in the FBI director's opinion it was extreme carelessness, contained the names of American undercover intelligence agents, some of whom are no longer with us. This is the belief of a lot of people in the intelligence community. If Mrs. Clinton does become president of the United States, she's going to have a lot of antipathy towards her by people in the intelligence community. This is the tip of the iceberg.
That wasn't in the report that people might have died because names were listed and sent, right?
Correct. The FBI did not reveal that. The FBI never revealed the contents, and quite properly, because it's still classified.
Sure.
The FBI never revealed the contents of the 25 top secret, of which 5 were SAP, meaning even FBI agents didn't have the clearance to reveal them. So Bill Binney is saying of the 60,000 NSA agents and contractors, there's a critical mass who fear Mrs. Clinton's presidency,
right,
and more likely than not hacked into the DNC
so the
and
NSA
leaked
has
this.
got them.
So this is
according to them.
This is a man you know well, Judge,
Yes.
and he recently did a radio interview where he explained essentially that. Listen.
If you had to just estimate here as an analyst who your best guess, what would be your best guess for who the hacker is, who Lucifer 2 is?
In this situation, I was thinking about how many other people have this data and hacked into the DNC, well as hacking into Hillary's server at home. I go back to a statement made by Director Mueller of the FBI back in 30th of March of 2011, and he said he got together with the Department of Defense and they created a technology database where he, as a member of the FBI, could go in with one query and get all past emails and all future ones as they came in on a person. Now, what he's talking about is going into the NSA database. So that means that NSA and a number of other agencies in the U.S. government also have those emails.
So what he's saying is there's this NSA database, and unbeknownst to us, because there's no oversight, the FBI, the CIA has access to it. Comey could have looked at Hillary's email if they had him, but then he'd open a whole can of worms.
Right. Then he would be revealing that the NSA, in fact, does have everybody's emails, which
and
a lot of us,
be a secret.
right, which a lot of us believe, which Bill Binney, a former NSA official who developed the software that the NSA uses, says they have, but which the NSA has never officially acknowledged.
Julian Assange was on another show yesterday and said that they got a lot more damning Hillary Clinton campaign emails coming out.
Okay, this again is going to become a campaign issue because WikiLeaks and Julian Assange blame Mrs. Clinton for the fact that he is in exile in the basement of the Ecuadorian embassy in London. They also condemn Mrs. Clinton's secrecy and they want to reveal what they have. And Brian, I know you don't like this guy, but every time they have promised a data dump, they have delivered. Yes.
You are very clearly quoting from WikiLeaks, and what's really important about WikiLeaks is that the Russian government has engaged in espionage against Americans. They have hacked American websites, American accounts of private people, of institutions. Then they have given that information to WikiLeaks for the purpose of putting it on the internet. This has come from the highest levels of the Russian government, clearly from Putin himself, in an effort, as 17 of our intelligence agencies have confirmed, to influence our election. So I actually think the most important question of this evening, Chris, is finally, will Donald Trump admit and condemn that the Russians are doing this and make it clear that he will not have the help of Putin in this election?
The emails which were exposed by WikiLeaks revealed a very strong bias on the part of high officials in the Democratic Party for the candidacy of Hillary Clinton, and a very strong prejudice on the part of the same people towards the candidacy of Bernie Sanders, even though such bias and prejudice had been alleged by Sanders and denied by the Democratic National Committee. It even resulted in the resignation of the chair of the committee as a result of a unanimous request from the members of the committee and the intervention of President Obama himself. But in order to get this issue off the front page, the DNC and the Clinton campaign decided to blame, of all people, the Russians. They accused Vladimir Putin of being in cahoots with Donald Trump and having his intelligence services hack the DNC to expose emails to make Mrs. Clinton look bad and thereby benefit Donald Trump. But the Russians had nothing to do with it, because this week, a 30-year veteran of the National Security Administration, the NSA, the domestic spies who spy on all of us all the time, the former high-ranking NSA official who developed the software that the NSA now uses, which allows it to capture not just metadata, but content of every telephone call, text message, email in the United States of every person in the United States of America. This individual said, guess what? The NSA hacked the Democratic National Committee. Why would the NSA hack the DNC? Because the members of the intelligence community simply do not want Hillary Clinton to be president of the United States, because she doesn't know how to handle state secrets, because some of the state secrets that she revealed use the proper true names of American intelligence agents operating undercover in the Middle East. When they lost their covers, they ran for their lives, and some of them didn't run fast enough and lost their lives. It's very telling that the intelligence community would feel so strongly about Mrs. Clinton that they would attempt to sabotage her campaign to prevent her from becoming their boss. It's also telling that these folks would break American law in order to, in their view, save it. Welcome to my chambers.
Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? Tonight, what if the Constitution no longer applied? What if the whole purpose of the Constitution was to limit the government? What if Congress's enumerated powers in the Constitution no longer limited Congress, but were actually used as a justification to extend Congress's authority over every realm of human life? What if the president, meant to be an equal to Congress, has instead become a democratically elected, term-limited monarch? What if the president assumed that everything he did was legal just because he's the president? What if he could interrupt your regularly scheduled radio and TV programming for a special message from him? What if he could declare war on his own? What if he could read your emails and your texts without a search warrant? What if he could kill you without warning? What if Supreme Court justices no longer looked to the Constitution to determine the constitutionality of a law, but rather simply to what justices who preceded them thought about it? What if the rights and principles guaranteed in the Constitution have been so distorted in the past 200 years as to be unrecognizable by the founders? What if the 50 states were no longer sovereign entities, equals to each other, and parents of the federal government they voluntarily constituted? What if the states were mere provinces of a totally nationalized and fully centralized government? What if the Constitution was amended stealthily, not by constitutional amendments duly ratified by the states, but by the constant and persistent expansion of the federal government's role in our lives? What if the federal government decided if its own powers were proper and constitutional? What if the Constitution were no longer the supreme law of the land? What if you needed a license from the government to speak, to assemble, or to protest against the government? What if the government didn't like what you planned to say, and so it didn't give you the license? What if the right to keep and bear arms only applied to the government? What if posse comitatus, the federal law that prohibits our military from occupying our streets, were no longer in effect? What if the government considered the military an adequate dispenser of domestic law enforcement? What if cops looked and acted like troops and you couldn't distinguish the military from the police? What if you were not secure in your person, in your papers, and in your property? What if federal agents could write their own search warrants in defiance of the Constitution? What if the government could decide when you were and were not entitled to a jury trial? What if the government could take your property whenever it wanted? What if the government could continue prosecuting you until it got the verdict it wanted? What if the government could force you to testify against yourself simply by labeling you a domestic terrorist? What if the government could torture you until you said what the government wanted to hear? What if people running for president actually supported torture? What if the government tortured your children to get to you? What if government judges and government lawyers intimidated juries into convicting the innocent? What if the government could send you to your death and your innocence meant nothing so long as the government's procedures were followed? What if America's prison population, the largest in the world, was a cruel and unusual way for a country to be free? What if half the prison population never harmed anyone but themselves? What if the people had no rights except those the government chose to let them have? What if the states had no rights except to do as the federal government commanded? What if our elected officials didn't really live among us, but instead all had their hearts and homes in Washington, D.C.? What if the government could strip you of your rights because of where your mother was when you were born? What if the income tax was unconstitutional?
What if the states were convinced to give up their representation in Congress? What if the government tried to ban you from using a substance in your body that is older than the government itself? What if voting didn't mean anything anymore because both political parties stand for big government? What if the government could write any law, regulate any behavior, and tax any event? The Constitution be damned. What if the government was the reason we don't have a Constitution anymore? What if you could love your country but hate what the government has done to it? What if sometimes to love your country you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if I'm right? What if the government is wrong? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?